Hello there, I'm Cerise Fairfax, and this is Storytime. Welcome to my channel. Get ready for some unpredictable stories. If this is your type of video, then please go ahead and subscribe. Don't forget to hit that like button and the notification bell.
Hey guys, welcome to Storytime. I'm Cerise Fairfax, and this is my channel. And this is Storytime Saturdays, where we talk about stories that can get quite deep. And they also have lies and deceit and corruption and all types of unpredictable endings. But without any further ado, let's get into this story today. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe, hit that like button, and don't forget to ding the notifications. It will let you know when I upload another video. Alrighty, so let's get down to the basics. There are two main characters, Claudia and Eddie. Now, Claudia and Eddie, they were young love. Eddie came from a very Christian family, a very Christian background. And he was actually a junior pastor. His dad was a pastor. And he came just from a Baptist background and always was good in school and a great guy, you know. Now, Claudia, she was actually just as sweet and just as nice, but they ended up getting pregnant at a very young age. So, of course, Eddie, being the good guy that he is, he took Claudia on. The whole family, they were like, you know what, you guys are kind of young, but we're just going to roll with it and we will welcome this God's gift into the family. Now, a few years pass, 10 years to be exact, and Claudia, she started to feel like she had a different calling. She started to wonder, is this love? This cannot be love. She started to feel really smothered. Now, let's give these guys some ages just so you can grasp the understanding of why Claudia would feel like she needs a break out of her shell. She was 16 when she had her baby. Now she's 26. And well, at this point, she was 26. And she just really wanted to spread her wings. So Eddie, he didn't want to spread his wings. He's 2 years older than her. And he was like, listen, I love you. And if you really want to spread your wings and you really want to go out and just see what life is all about, I'm waiting for you. And she was like, all right. So she went out and she did not get into another serious relationship, but she got into several relationships. And then Eddie became her counselor. Like she would get into an argument with one guy, or another guy would be like not treating her right, or another guy was getting too much into her, like just all these little issues she was having with all these different men. And she was telling Eddie about everything. And Eddie was like, you know what? That's what guys are about. Or, you know what? Don't worry about it. You're a beautiful woman and you're worth so much more. And he was just rested in the fact that she was having all of these relationship issues with man after man. And he was just like, this is what you wanted, until one day when she met Chris. Now, when she met Chris, Chris was a dynamic, charming man. And she started to really get involved with Chris. Now, she still used Eddie as her confidant. She would say to Eddie, I really like this guy, Chris. He's treating me very well. We get along so well. He's just magnificent. And Eddie was waiting for the other foot to drop. And then months passed and months passed. And then he asked to meet up with her and he's like, listen, I want to speak to you seriously. We need to sit down because, I still love you and I still miss you. And she was like, you know what? There was a part of her too, because Chris, his the bad action was really not all that. Even though he treated her like a rock star, he treated her like the queen she was, he still was lacking in the bedroom area. So Claudia, she was like, you know what? I don't want to get back together, Eddie. I have a really good man, but maybe we can be friends with benefits. And he was at the point where he would take anything from Claudia. He still loved her. They were co-raising their child together. And he was just like, let's do it. So she would go over to his house when she was, picking up their child or whatever, and they would get it on every now and again. And then one day she started to feel guilty. And she said to Eddie, I can't do this any longer. You're now at this moment, he was, the full-time pastor. He took over his dad's congregation because his dad had passed on. And this time, at this moment, he was like full out reverend pastor, and he didn't have any other woman, but everyone in the town, like in the small community that they were in, they knew that Claudia was with all of these other different men, because sometimes she'd be all up in the bars, like during those years that they broke up. And they also knew that she was just kind of, you know, flirting around. Now, none of them really knew that Chris was her main squeeze. None of them. And Chris, he knew. He just felt like, he knew that she was a little flighty, but he knew that he was her only one at this time. He had no clue that she was sleeping with her ex-husband. So one day, Claudia, she got guilt. She felt so guilty. She felt like this is not the thing to do, because her and Chris were going to the church. Chris knew that the pastor was Claudia's ex. Chris knew that the pastor was the father of Claudia's baby. Chris knew that it was a whole family thing going on, but Chris was cool with it because Chris was like, "Hey, let's just roll with it. He's a father of he's a man of God, and he seems like he's accepting the fact that Claudia has moved on. Everything's gravy." So they would go there every Sunday and to church, but then she got hit by the Holy Spirit. And she said to her ex-husband, she said to Eddie, Eddie, we can't do this any longer. Like, I really feel like this is not a good thing. We are both being deceitful, and this is not good. In the Bible, it says that a man should not covet another man's wife. And Eddie said, what are you talking about? You are my wife. And she's like, but we're divorced now and we're sleeping together. And this is not good because one day I'm going to marry Chris. I know that we're going to get married. And Eddie was like, what are you talking about? Like, you guys can't be that serious. And what's the hurt in you and I sleeping together? We were married. We have a child together. And she's like, it doesn't matter. I've moved on now. And not only that, you are now entering a different relationship, which Eddie was. Eddie was dating someone else at this time too. And she's like, we're being deceitful and it's not good what we're doing to our partners. So we're going to have to stop doing this. It's not good at all. And Eddie was like, well, if this is what you want to do, then that's fine. So then Eddie went to Chris and he said, Chris, I got to tell you something. My heart is convicted. I need to admit to you that Claudia and I have been sleeping together. And I'm a man of my word. I'm a man of God. And I don't want to do this any longer. She keeps seducing me. And she keeps trying to tell me that you are not good in the bedroom. You are not good when you are with her. She told me this. And she told me that you don't really have a lot going on in that department. And I was coerced into pleasing her as my wife. Chris was like, whoa, huh? And he's like, okay, well, thank you very much, Pastor. I really appreciate your honesty. And I'll make sure I speak to Claudia about this. And he did. He said, Claudia, Pastor Eddie came to me and he told me that you guys are still sleeping together. And he's like, it's hard for me to believe because in the last month, we have been amazing in the bedroom. He's like, I know I haven't been all that, but lately we've been amazing. Am I just imagining this? And she's like, no, you have been awesome. And I told Eddie just last week that I don't want to be with him any longer. I told him that we need to stop doing this. And Chris was like, really? And he's like, okay. He's like, there's something deceitful going on here. We're not going back to that church. We're going to go to another church. And he's like, we're going to have to just put this behind us, find forgiveness. And he's like, I'm going to find the forgiveness in my heart, and I'm going to just let this go. And she was like, thank you so much. I love you, and I don't love him, and I'm sorry that that even happened. And he said, all right. And that was it. They stopped going to that church. And then, not only that, Chris asked Claudia to marry him. And Claudia said yes. So now they were engaged. And their community was celebrating this because Claudia was a very flamboyant woman. When something was going good in her life, she had to let the whole entire community know. So, and by this point as well, everyone knew that her and Chris were serious because time had gone on and people were seeing them at church together. So they knew that she was pretty much settled again after the pastor, and she wasn't in the bar with this guy, that guy any longer, right? So Chris was a main staple in her life for months. And so people weren't surprised when they got engaged. And Chris was just head over heels for Claudia, and he just loved her to pieces. And he said to her, you know what? We're going to get married. I want to have children with you. And that's it. We're going to live happily ever after. You're a great woman, and you're not perfect, but you're mine. And then a week later, after their engagement party, she was found in her backyard, and she was laying down, not breathing. Nobody knew what happened to her at all, but there was a bang on the back of her head, and it looked like somebody had hit her with a blunt object, and her head was just open. And so she passed away. Now, at first, they didn't have any idea who it was. They took in Chris and they questioned Chris, and Chris was like, no, I love this woman. She's my fiance. And they didn't suspect Chris. They knew Chris was innocent. They went down to the bar and they looked for, some ex-lovers, some ex-jealous boyfriends that might have been wanting to get to her because she was always turning guys away. She was going from one man to the next, and their community was small and everyone knew each other in this bar that she would frequent. And she actually met Chris in that bar as well. But they weren't going to that bar any longer once they got engaged and once they started to prepare for their future. They were just spending time alone all the time at home. Now, they questioned Eddie, Pastor Eddie. They didn't think for the life of them that he would ever be guilty because he comes from a wonderful family and he had an alibi. And they asked him, where were you that night? And he said he was preparing for his sermon and he was in his office. Now, he didn't really have too many people in the church at that time. There was a men's choir practice going on, and there was a men's group, Bible study group going on. But it would be easy for him to slip out and slip back in. But in any case, all of them spoke up for him and they said, no, Pastor Eddie was here. He was in his office. He was preparing the sermon. He had the sign on his door saying, do not disturb. And he made sure to tell everybody that he was writing his sermon for the following Sunday. And nobody seen him leave. So the police were like, okay, well, you know what? We need to check into this a little bit more, because it was possible for him to leave his office, go out to the back parking lot, drive over to Claudia's house, and then get back in his car and get back into the church without being seen. Because the choir practice is an hour long. The men's Bible study is an hour long, right? And it only took a minute for him to get down the street, hit her over the head, and get back. So what they did was they started to follow his tracks. And they did ask him if they can, check out his car, see if they can find anything in his car. They asked if they could check his office, and he allowed them to do everything until a few weeks later when they were able to get the phone records. Yes, that's how he got caught. He took his cell phone with him and he called her on the way to her house. And he said to her, I guess to make sure she was there or whatever, but she didn't answer the phone. So then he texted her and he said, I'm on my way. Where are you? Are you at home? We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. And she said, I don't want to talk to you. Chris isn't here. I'm cleaning the backyard up. I'm planting, and I don't want to be bothered. And within minutes, he was at her place, and then he left. So at the time of when they think her life was taken, he was there. They had to wait for the cell phone records to come in. They had to wait. It takes some time to do that. They checked his car, everything was clean. They checked his office, everything was clean. They checked his home, and everything was clean. And his story seemed to really be clean as well until the phone records came in. And in the phone records, he had texted her. Now, he thought deleting everything from his phone was going to be fine because they also asked to see his cell phone. When he handed it to them, they noticed that there were a few deleted messages in between. And there were a few conversations where it looks like he just deleted his parts. And so they didn't say anything to him. And they thought, you know what, we better just get the cell phone records. And they got the cell phone records. And then once they did, they could see that his cell phone pinned at her house that same day that she was taken. And it should not have, because he said to them he hadn't been at her house for some time. He's never been there. Like in the last few weeks, he goes there only to drop off his child. But lately, she's been picking the child up at his mom's house, and everything has been amicable. And so, why would he lie about that? So then they started to really dig into the records and go back, and they started to see a lot of angry texts. They started to see a lot of back and forth, him saying that he will never let her go, that's his wife, and that Chris will never get her, and that she needs to be wise and smart, and that God made her for him. And then they started to really get past circumstantial evidence, and they got to evidence enough to be able to take him in. And then when they went in and they took him in for questioning again, he actually admitted it. And he said, yes, yes. He admitted to everything. And that is a story of love and passion. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to be careful when we are in love. And when our mates move on, it is so important for us to accept their decision. It may hurt us. We may feel like we can't move on. We may get depressed. We may get to a point where we are thinking about them when we're waking up. We're thinking of them as we're rolling over in our sleep, or even when we are going to sleep. It's painful sometimes when you love someone and you invest so much into them, thinking that they are your future, thinking that they're going to be the ones that you will grow old with. And it does get tough. Sometimes the younger you are, the tougher it is. And even when you're older and you've been with someone for 30 years and then you see them in the arms of someone else. Like when Chris and Claudia would show up at the church and Pastor Eddie would be preaching to the pulpit, it must have been very difficult for him to see his wife with another man in the church. And what did the community think about that as well, right? The pastor's wife with a new man in the church. It's all just a little bit of corruption, all just a little shady, and all just a little too much, I think, for one man to go through. But it still doesn't grant him permission to do what he did. And when we look at stuff like that, we have to say, stop. Do not allow ourselves to get caught up. That's where he should have been reading the Bible. That's where he should have really been meditating. That's when he really should have been turning his life back over to the Lord and thinking, this is a blessing in disguise. Like, why would he want a woman that was so insensitive? Why would he want a woman that had no compassion, taking her new man to the church in front of everyone? That's embarrassing, I would think. That's quite shameful. So why would he want that? But this is not to victim shame at all, because Claudia was also very young, and that community, that church, she grew up in. So just because she's not with her husband any longer and she has a new love, why does she have to stop being with her community, right? There's always two sides of the coin. And I would say when we flip that coin, we all got to make sure that we accept the side that we get. and work with it, roll with it. Like that old saying goes, you get lemons, make lemonade. And so, with that being said, I think we can all learn a lesson from this. Don't covet another man's wife because let's face it, they were broken up. Pastor Eddie became her confidant. Pastor Eddie became her side thing. Pastor Eddie became her friend. And he was just rolling with it. He never thought for the life of him that she would actually fall in love with someone else. And so he put himself in that predicament. He put himself in those circumstances where he was believing that one day she will go back to him. He was praying. He was hoping. He was yearning for her to go back to the family unit. But she was not. She loved Chris, and that's what it was. So, even though a person is a pastor, it doesn't make them perfect. Sometimes people of the church can actually be more questionable than those in a bar. But I guess such is life. Guys, this was story time. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Cerise Fairfax. If you enjoyed this story, go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure you hit the notification bell because it will let you know when I upload a video on Saturdays for Storytime Saturdays. And not only Storytime Saturdays, but I upload videos every day of the week. I put up random videos on Monday, relocation and real estate videos about the Dominican Republic on Tuesdays, Relationship Wednesdays, where we talk about relationships, whether we talk to a couple or we talk to somebody that had a bad relationship, or if I just tell a story about a relationship. And then we do Thursdays. Thursdays, I put up a segment from my local television show here in the Dominican Republic, where I sit down and I talk to expats, visitors, and locals. And then also on Friday, Fitness Fridays, because I have 50 pounds to lose and I'm doing it. And listen, losing weight is never an easy thing. Gaining weight is just all too easy. But I'm giving myself time. It's been almost a month now and I went down about one pant size. So I'm feeling good. And then we have, of course, Story Time Saturdays. And then Sosua Sundays, we have a live feed where I go out into the streets of Sosua in the Dominican Republic where I live here. And I talk to people in the street, or I interview someone like a business owner or somebody that is a visitor here, an expat here, or someone that would have advice for you. Alrighty, guys, thank you so much for joining me again. This is Storytime Saturdays, and I'm so glad that you were here to join me. I'm Cerise. Take care.
The #1 DNA paternity test. You can have it delivered to you anywhere around the world. The DNA test is so easy to take. It's 100% accurate, and you can do it straight from home. Just $59. The test kit and the lab fees included for one father and one child. They will send you a DNA sample collection kit for easy at-home use. Return the swabs in the pre-addressed envelope and your results will be available to you in about a week's time. Paternity is a sensitive issue. Let's face it, you really want highly trained staff of professionals ready to talk to you and supply guidance and reassurance on these sensitive and confidential matters. You can follow up online at any time using your unique access code to know the progress status of the DNA study. It will usually take about 3 days after your samples have arrived in the lab. Easy peasy, no more worrying and no more fretting. And it's so easy to order your kit on WhatsApp 647-513-5233. Simply say this code, DR Paternity, and start your process today.